Hafaday Action PAC members, Hafaday voters of Guam. Welcome to another special episode of the We Want to Know Action PAC show. I have the honor and privilege of welcoming one of the teams vying for your gubernatorial candidate vote. And we have the Camacho Adit team. Hafaday, how are you doing?
Hafaday. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you guys so much for, I know right now we're literally in the crunch time of the campaign with the general election. I want to say only about 12 days away. So we do appreciate your time. And we do know that our voters and our viewers will appreciate learning more about your candidacy. And with that said, before I hand it over to you guys for a time of welcoming remarks, I always like to introduce Action PAC for possibly those new viewers. So the Action PAC was formed out of a need to play an active role in government beginning at the grassroots level. Action PAC comprises members from a cross-section of Guam society representing all walks of life and united in our belief that we can affect change through action. We welcome you to get to know us better as we hope to help the viewers and voters get to know you as a candidate better. So before we jump into the interview, can you guys, would you guys like to give some opening remarks to our viewers?
Yes, so Senator, you can begin.
Oh, thank you, Gov. I appreciate that. Anyway, thank you, Phil, and to Action PAC for giving us this opportunity to be here with you today, and also the listeners and viewers of Action PAC. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Tony Ada. I'm serving my 5th term in the Guam legislature. I'm the son of Ben and Terry Ada, and my wife is Annette Umpinko Ada, and I have 4 children. Lonnie, Boo, Ali, and Amaya, and 1 grandson, Ryan. So, and my daughter-in-law, Kylene. We come from, I started out as the way bottom of the barrel in our family business. And from there, I joined the military. I was in the Army for 6 years, decided to come back home and raise my family here on Guam, where 3 of my children are, at least now 2 now are currently at, and 1 is going to school in the States, and 1 is at working in the mainland as well. So Guam is our home. We've always made Guam our home, and anything that we can do to bring to the anything that we can do to help our people on our island to always progress and move forward is the ultimate goal of the Camacho Ada team, and most especially, our families too. These are times that are challenging. These are times that are going to be more especially, difficult to traverse in the next couple of years with all these federal funds that are running out, and now these local funds that are going to have to sustain our island and sustain our economy, and we have to do things right. And that's what Governor Felix Camacho and I intend to do, is do it right from the get-go, from day one. And we humbly ask that you give us that opportunity, and we look forward to the questions that you'll be asking us, and we look forward to answering them as well. Thank you. Go.
Well, Hafaday, for those of you who may or may not know me, my name is Felix Camacho. I'm a former 2-time governor of Guam. I've also served 4 terms in the Guam legislature. Interestingly, I am also the son of the first elected, actually the last appointed governor of Guam, and the first appointed governor of Guam, Carlos Garcia Camacho. My mother is Lourdes Duenas Perez Camacho. Come from a big family of 7 children. I'm the second eldest. My wife, of course, is Joanne Garcia Camacho, Gumatauto family. And we've got 3 children. We've got 6 grandchildren. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. And I just felt that although I've served 2 terms, understanding the times and the seasons of really what's going on Guam, I felt the calling after much, of course, prayer and thought given to this, that I should step out of the sidelines and offer myself again as a candidate, having been tested and proven in the most difficult of times, that I feel that I felt called to come back and offer myself as a candidate. Been very honored and privileged to have Senator Tony Ada to join me. And I think we get along so well. It is having worked with two other lieutenant governors, both Kaleo Moylan and Dr. Michael Cruz, brilliant men, there's a lot I bring. I've been proven, I've been tested, and I bring the experience of having gone through struggles, as a governor, but also through life. Life has its ups and downs. It's got its good and bad seasons, but here we are, I think, facing and heading into a very, very tumultuous and difficult time, having now exiting COVID-19, and we look forward to offering ourselves. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys very much. And and I do want to point out that that I have noticed personally from my point of view, there really is a very honest and pure connection as far as the way both of you interact. I had the pleasure of joining one of our platform partners, the Guam Contractors Association. They put together a forum, and you guys were present, and I noticed that right away, as you guys respectfully handed over the mic per se, for each to get their responses in. So I do appreciate that. So let's go. What we'll do is we'll jump right into the first question. And can you please let our viewers know, what are your platform pillars?
Well, I'd like to point out that we've got, it's called a new season, and there are basically 7 key areas of our platform. It is business, it is education, family, government, faith, justice, and health. So those are the 7 areas that we are going to be focusing in on as we take office. Tony,
Excellent. Did Senator Adam wanted to throw anything into that?
When we get into office, as the governor said, these are going to be the pillars that we guide our administration with, and that we look forward to ensuring that we do them judiciously and faithfully, so that when we do emerge from this pandemic, and that we start now rebuilding our lives and start rebuilding our island the right way from the very beginning.
Excellent. And I do want to ask, being that you did bring up, a very important fact, the pandemic. I did have the opportunity to also interview the opposing team, the incumbents, at their headquarters, and they did mention, the fact that they were the only team to have to deal with a pandemic and face the atrocities of a pandemic, and then come out and in their interview come out better. But I know our viewers want to know, and I definitely want to know, is there anything that you guys would do differently if you were in office during the pandemic?
Well, it's when you look in hindsight, there's certainly, now you've got the advantage of what you could or could not have done differently. And we must remind the viewers that they weren't the only team involved. There was an entire nation of the United States of America, the other unincorporated territories of America, and of course the rest of the world, and how the pandemic was handled. I believe that they followed script, following the Democratic Biden administration outline on how to respond to this pandemic. And certainly, I believe that the level to which the administration, particularly the governor, who took absolute control over this thing with executive authority under a declared public health state of emergency, there was, I believe, a lot of overreach in her power and authority as governor. We can look to other governors in the United States. You've got the governor down in Florida. You've got the governor in South Dakota, the governor in Texas. There are many others that handled it differently, those in the blue states and those in the red states. But the absolute lockdowns that had occurred here, the removal of our personal freedoms and our rights, the intrusion into our lives, and of course the damage caused to our economy. It took 50 plus years to build our economy. And when you think of tourism as the mainstay, it was obliterated within a matter of 2.5 years. And so now we have the aftermath. yes, a lot of money came in, and we give a lot of credit to Congressman Michael Snickles for all that he had done in advocating for Guam and getting our fair share and then some in providing the federal funds that came in response to COVID-19, close to $2 billion, if not more, that came in here. But it really, if you think about it, the number of businesses that had to close and absolutely shut down and close their doors, never to reopen again, the number of families that have had to leave. When we had gone to the Tourism Council or forum, they talked about upwards of 10,000 people that have left island. So even demographically, we have a shrinking population because many of our talented and younger population had to take their families and leave island in search of better opportunities and living conditions. And so they've left. When you think about the separation and the pain that was caused with the isolation, we had recently run into individuals that said, you've got to help us with the Manamko, who are completely isolated, lonely, depressed. You have to think about the number of suicides that are happening. Guam has always been at the high end in the past few years, but now I understand they're average of between 2 to 4 suicides a week. So there are many challenges, and what would we have done differently? I believe that we would have incorporated more of the public, not only the healthcare situation, but or our healthcare professionals, but those within the business community and everywhere else that were gravely affected. We would not have divided the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, and the forced. There was just so much, again, with our freedoms taken away, the closing of the schools and the impact upon our school children, the closing of the businesses, the closing of the churches, closing of many business establishments, restaurants, telling you when you can go, when you can't, who can open, who cannot, how many people can pack a certain place, what percentages were there. The list goes on and on and on. In executive orders, I believe 71 of them. So there was a definite overreach by the governor and how she handled this. And they made use the excuse that, well, we've never been through this before. But there are other examples of governors that were able to bring about fairness and equity. And of course, it transitioned from what was a public health response to COVID-19 into what eventually is, and very apparent now, a political response. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, just to go off on Governor Camacho's, now we're at a point where we need to rebuild our economy. We need to rebuild our island. When we're coming out of this, and what is the exit plan from the administration? You haven't seen an exit plan because they don't have an exit plan. We need to ensure that businesses are able to sustain themselves. We need to ensure that we get our people back into the jobs. We need to ensure that the mental health stability of our people are whole and complete, and ensuring that all the sectors of both private and public and government, are all in sync in bringing our island back to where it used to be pre-pandemic. And unfortunately, during Governor Camacho's time, he weathered several typhoons, earthquake, just different disasters, and he had to do it with a minimal budget. This government has received over $2 billion that they were able to do what they needed to get done and still receive money. But yet, a lot of that money is still locked up. And what are they doing? We have a Gov Guam budget at $1 billion. We have other financial government, federal government grants that are coming in. So what are they doing that, are the exit plan that is coming for our island to be able to excel in the next couple of years?
Yeah, you guys definitely have brought up very valid points that I personally heard in our effort as the Action PAC through our outreaches and our events, of hearing the pulse of the community and the citizens' concerns. And definitely it was a trying time, and the one of the biggest points that we've heard from a consensus was that a lot of the population really didn't appreciate the separation between vax and unvax. that put people a lot of families in a predicament, and almost you had to choose sides. Well, oh, you couldn't be invited, or you can be invited. But also the closure of the businesses, especially Action PAC being very pro business. That was one of our biggest concerns, as far as our constituents within the business community, of what they wanted us to really focus on as a PAC representing them, was why are certain ones being able to open but you can't, or why can you go to Kmart and buy this thing but you can't buy a white t-shirt? What's the reasoning and the logic behind that? And I think that some people still have unanswered questions from that period of the pandemic. Me personally, it was the closure of the churches that really affected my group at the time. We were Calvary Chapel in Asan. We were the almost labeled in the news the rebellious church, because we didn't shut down. We continued to yeah, yes, Pastor Nauta. I love him. I love him. He's a very strong man of faith, and he just told us that certain things were spoken, and through the word, and I mean, we're not forcing you in the congregation to show up, but if you want to, know that the doors are open. But I do believe that that's a lot of concerns that the community has shared. Yes, go.
No, I do want to say that I did attend one of the services in the parking lot.
Yes, correct.
And of course, the threat was there's going to be fines that are going to be imposed, and you've got public health officials that are going to be there to check on you, to make sure. And despite the threat of severe fines in the thousands of dollars, people still wanted to come out and express their faith and worship God, And so it was a very difficult time. People were very much upset about the roadblocks that were set up there. I felt even sad for GPD and the National Guard that were forced to play this role, that were there. Many people were expressed their concern and were quite upset about having to fly in to Guam, say they're coming for a funeral. They get pretty much dealt with customs, and then they would have to be put on a bus, brought down to a hotel, quarantined for 14 days. And in the meantime, what they came for to say goodbye to their loved ones, they were not able to attend the funeral or other services related to it. The separation of that, Tony can very much speak to the experiences that he and Annette had faced at their business at Addis Mortuary, and the families that were really struggling with this whole thing. Many of the elderly and those that were sick they died alone in the at the hospital, because they weren't able to even have their loved ones come and visit them because of the fear and the need to quarantine and separate. But the disruption to our lives, and my great concern, is what's going to happen, to our children that have been greatly affected by, that all that time away from the classroom. There are many problems, social economic problems, that I believe are going to become manifest over the next several years. We talked about the amount of suicide that's happening, and again, businesses that closed. I remember talking to some businesses that are, of course, not necessarily Chamorro, but of Asian descent, and they said, in our culture, to fail at a business venture is a loss of face, and how many of them had taken their lives. So the harm that was brought to this island, not only financially and economically, but spiritually and physically, it was a very, very difficult time. And so that's what we must contend with over the next several years. And let's not be blind to it and say that no, everything is fine and dandy. It's not. What's happened is a response where everything has been glossed over with money, saying, I'm going to give you money for this, I'm going to give you money for that, and everything's going to take care. No, money's not the answer.
Thank you so much for that. I think that speaks to quite a few of our viewers and our membership, as far as what they face personally. My grandmother was on my mother's side passed alone, so that spoke directly to me. Now that'll be a segue to our second question. Now that we're here, we're what we want to say, right? Post-pandemic, at least we pray that we're done with the pandemic. What is one main focus item, or two, since I have both of you on, that you believe your team can realistically accomplish in the next term?
Well, I'd like to address that, and then I'll pass it on to Tony. But the first one is crime. Crime that is directly related to drugs. Um, I don't think a day passes by where you can open up the Pacific Daily News or the Post and read about a crime. The number of crimes out there, and the statistics that if we can get an accurate and current number, would be alarming to any community of our size. And we really believe that there's a definite need to focus in on all of the relevant public safety and law enforcement agencies within Gov Guam, most particularly when it comes to crime. It would be with Guam Police Department. They've been undermanned, ill-equipped. I know that they've been given a pay raise, but they're very much concerned about the fact that it was only done by executive order. And what's going to happen? Is that going to be sustainable when the next term comes out and the federal dollars run out? Where is the money here locally to support that? And then, of course, when you hear about the reduction in the business community, the revenue stream, most especially with hotel, restaurant, and travel association related businesses, they're operating at 9% of what their revenues used to be. Those are their numbers that they've shared with us. We've lost from 25,000 plus employees down to 12,500 or less, and it continues to diminish. Many sectors in the private area are trying to recruit workers, but they're saying workers are like, why should I come to work when I can sit at home and get more money from federal assistance than if I went and worked full time? And so we've got to change the attitudes and mindsets. But crime and the level of crime that we're experiencing here on Guam that is directly related to drugs is one thing that we have to focus on, and we will focus in on, whether it's recruiting more police officers, ensuring that the pay is there, working with customs and quarantine and all the related relevant public safety and law enforcement agencies. And then we focus in and work collaboratively with our federal counterparts, work on establishing Guam as a high density area for drug interdiction, and getting that HIDTA designation from the federal government, bringing in more resources, coordinating and cooperating with our military Department of Defense partners, and because they have a growing population, and we're going to have to collaborate very closely with them and how we work with the military community, and of course bring this down to the municipal level with our mayors. All the relevant Gov Guam agencies that have to deal with treatment, whether it's in behavioral health and social workers that are out there, bringing in the faith-based organizations that can bring in programs for help and assistance, because this issue runs broad and deep and has affected every single family. The mere fact that we, the people of Guam, are living in fear in this day and age is totally unacceptable, and we must do everything we can to tackle this problem and solve it and put our resources to it. We believe that if there's ever a state of emergency that needs to be declared, it is a state of emergency with our public safety and law enforcement agencies, and make sure that we tackle this and give them the resources that are necessary and the personnel. Thank you. Tony?
And we will continue on that with, rebuilding our workforce, our employees for our economy. What took 50 years to build in tourism, we can't just push to the wayside. We need to continue to rebuild tourism. We need to continue to get our workforce, our men and women that are able and willing to go out there and, get a job and go back into the workforce so that they be able to provide for their families. Because I think once we get people to start providing for their families, less and less crime perhaps will be able to, start going to the wayside, because now people can afford to buy things. People will be able to afford to provide for their families. And sometimes, we look at those who are less fortunate, that they don't have the means to get what they need. We're going to work with them to get them the means. We want to make sure that all families are brought up together. The other issue is our hospital. We need to ensure that our hospital is taken care of. We're gonna rebuild that maternity ward. We're gonna do it, and we're gonna ensure that the hospital is a safe place to work for the doctors, for the nurses, and all the staff of the hospital, and the patients and the people who utilizes that hospital. We need to ensure that there's a sustainable and realistic plan for a new hospital. But in the meantime, we need to build the current hospital that we do have. And that's what's important, so that the healthcare of our people will always be first and foremost a priority in that hospital.
I do want to add that certainly another item that we must address are the schools within Department of Education, most particularly Simon Sanchez High School. In my time, I built 4, definitely, and of course we were ongoing and building the 5th one, which was John F. Kennedy High School, and the good Governor Eddie Calvo was able to cut the ribbon on that. But we also worked, built, I believe, 111 classrooms after the typhoons. We also built a new structure for Department of Youth Affairs. So you factor all of that in. And so there's definitely going to be success and completion of Simon Sanchez High School, an assessment of all that's ongoing within the all the other facilities that are there, understanding that there are changing demographics. And so what schools need to be repaired, refurbished, torn down, and rebuilt. It's going to be a long process, but we must begin to lay the foundation and the plans of what we must do, because even those who will succeed, Tony and I, have to have a plan with which to work. And so a sustainable, realistic plan on addressing all the schools and providing a safe environment in the hospital and the schools. Thank you.
And, Phil, when the governor brought up the schools, that's working with the superintendent and the Board of Education. And, those schools, the 4 schools that the governor had built, will be reverting back to government of Guam in the next couple of years. So we want to make sure that there's an action plan in place for the upkeep and maintenance of those schools. And if we need to work with the education department, the superintendent and the board to facilitate that action plan, we're going to work with them to ensure that those schools don't fall to the wayside and deteriorate as our current schools are, and we want to make sure that it's also a safe environment for our children and the teachers and staff at all of the schools.
Yeah. I do want to say that, there's wisdom in going back to the formulas and programs and approaches that have worked. But I believe that we will also find new ways of doing things and bring in innovation. One thing that Tony and I bring is that we are going to be able to work with the business and private sector. There are many people out there that have tremendous ideas and resources and initiatives that we can incorporate and find new ways of doing things and bring about efficiencies that are absolutely necessary. We're going to go out with expectation of great things to be accomplished and a confidence and authority to get it done. And so we bring that with us. Of course, very realistic about the challenges we're going to face, because this entire globe, this entire world is heading into an amazing period in world history, I believe. And we're excited to be a part of it. The challenges will be there. Mm-hmm. But every time challenges come, even if you're knocked down, you pick yourself back up and keep going at it, with confidence, with authority, and great expectation of things to come. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just the points that you two have highlighted. I mean, starting with crime, there's no other way to look at it. If you wake up and you are blinded by and think that that crime isn't an issue, it is an absolute issue, along with the drug and the methamphetamine. And now with the DEA reporting that fentanyl has hit our island, it is not a time to be recluse in your action. We need to have plans and teams and task force that need to be reintegrated into our public safety sector to combat these issues immediately. And we at the Guam Chamber of Commerce, who is one of our pillar partners, we had the DEA agent, and he was flat out was stating that there is a huge correlation with a struggling economy and people now in desperate times to resort to escapes, which would be the drugs and the addictions. And that's one of the main things, being a pro-business organization, but we're pro-community because we firmly believe a healthy economy and thriving businesses correlate to more jobs for our citizens to have that dignity of the hard work of supplying the food on the table for their family, but also the buying power to continue to stimulate the economy. And there's something said in that, because I mean, the obviously there's been multiple reports depending on where you're reading it and who's pushing it out, that in regards to the homeless issue. But I did move off island for about, I want to say, 8 years to California. And man, I just can't recall, or honestly recall, if I've ever seen panhandlers back in 2002 and 2004. But they're almost every street corner. And it's I don't believe that majority of the people want to do it, but the fact that they feel no hope, I think that's a huge issue. So you touched on that. You also touched on our healthcare and our hospital, but also the schooling. Another personal issue for me, because I did attend Simon Sanchez for 2 years, and the pleas and the cries of the teacher, my former teachers, and some of my former classmates who are now teachers are in the staff. It's loud and clear. But I will say, just with us being apolitical, that the depending on who you're talking to, they're saying that these are things that should have been fixed maybe before your term, or during your term, or after your term, and it isn't just the current administration. Is there a response to that you guys might want to give?
Well, I'll just refer back to the time I was in office. So although we had used a municipal lease plan to build those new schools, every summer for 8 years, my administration, every director and every department adopted a school. We partnered with the military community. We partnered with our mayors of each village where a school may be. And from there, we would then volunteer our time. Private sector, even out of our pockets, we would then begin to spruce up the schools, in anticipation of the students coming in. And in that adoption program, we would paint, we would scrape, we would bush cut, we would do everything we could to prepare the classrooms. The teachers themselves, the administrators got involved. And so it was a real community effort. Even the military community came out and partnered with us and helped us. CBs, you had also people from the Air Force, you had people from the Navy, you had even our National Guard, and even the reserves come out and help. And so a community effort where the parents even came out. They took pride in the schools and they did what they could. And so, when you think about what's happening after the governor shut the schools down, you let anything sit for 2.5, 3 years, it's going to rot. And what when you leave a vehicle, for example, and leave it sitting there, you don't turn on the, you don't run it, it's going to eventually, the battery's going to run out. So there was no real cognizant effort to maintain the facilities. Now, I don't know where the DOE Board of Education was on this and the superintendent, but definitely, that's what's going to be required, is that we're going to have to go in and begin to maintain the structure. Anybody who's a homeowner, or wherever you live or your domicile, you need to maintain it. It's a daily process.
Mhm.
And maintenance. Even when you point to the hospital, what happened there? Lou says she's a nurse. And what I think the nurses feel bad about it. If she was a nurse and cared so much about the hospital, then why did she abandon that? Look at the state it's fallen into. The doctors themselves, the personnel will tell you that it is not a safe environment, not only for the patients, but for those who work there. And so maintenance and upkeep is absolutely a necessary part of any structure, whether it's government, private sector, or personally owned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Phil, that adopt a school program has carried on through in the Calvo administration throughout their term in office. And it was unfortunate that when school opened up this year, that the grass was unkept. The schools were still trying to open up. The air conditioners are out. I mean, even to this day, the air conditioner in the library at Price Elementary School is still out. So, general maintenance of the facilities and the equipment and were not being done while the kids were out, so that when they come back, it would have been able to come back and have a nice, clean school with all working air conditioners and things that we're just ready for them to learn.
Yeah, I do believe that would be a general consensus from the groups up there at Simon Sanchez, because a group of my friends, spearheaded by our good buddy Rich Camacho, they gathered together. They got a few senatorial candidates, and they did the bush cutting for the school out of the pride and the history of being an alum. But at the same token, a lot of people were wondering, since it was closed for years, or a year during the pandemic, year and a half, where was the preventive maintenance? Where was the proactive approach? And a lot of people, they just couldn't understand, or in their conversations with me, just me asking them, where do you stand, or how do you feel about this? They were just highly disappointed that a school that has been sitting, that had all the time in the world to get worked on, was opened and not readily available for the next generation of students.
Right.
So that was definitely a huge concern. Now, before we get into our initiatives, our closing question is, we always like to put it out there. Action PAC is comprised of the largest business organizations on Guam, from the Guam Chamber, Korean and Chinese Chamber, Women's Chamber, contractors, realtors, and our Hotel and Restaurant Association. Our organizations got together and they said, we need a voice. Thus, the Action PAC was born, and we also extended to community concerns and general concerns. And we want to continue to push for a thriving economy will equal B, a great quality of life. So with that point said, how do you and your team intend to continue to assist the local business community so we can get past this stage of economic recovery?
What was the question again?
Well, I can begin. How can we engage again with the business community to get things going? I definitely believe that there's got to be collaboration between the administration, the executive branch, and the private sector. In discussions with, for example, building permits, occupancy permits, and the like, with DPW and all the regulatory agencies within Gov Guam to get things going, to pursue projects, to build, to construct, has been very frustrating. And the private sector, of course, feels that the government agencies that are relevant to that process have been unresponsive. And there's going to have to be a change of attitude, and again, a reorientation to understand that we are here to serve the public. And we want to simplify the processes. Just because we've been doing this process year after year, day after day, doesn't mean that it necessarily is still efficient. So bring in efficiencies, simplify the process, remind ourselves that we're here to serve the public and make things happen. If we want to invite businesses and build the economy again, the government must do its part in getting these businesses started as soon as possible. And so all the relevant regulatory Gov Guam agencies must be on the same page, with an attitude and an understanding that we are public servants first and foremost. Thank you.
Yeah. He said,
excellent.
he said, but with that said, when you look at the past couple of years, what the administration has touted about excess revenues or surpluses, right? 100 million here, 100 million there. Where are the services provided to the people that justify that surplus for the government? You would expect that the services provided to the government, to the people, would be first-class services, because that's where the money comes from, is the private sector. Guam does not print its own money. It takes the private sector to ensure that they pay their taxes, that our government employees are paid, that our debt services are paid. So this is why we need to ensure that we continue to build and simplify the process for working with Gov Guam. And that's why we want to make sure that we work with our private sector and look for those that are experts in the different fields, so that we be able to pull and harness from their expertise and say, how is it that we can simplify this process for building permits or clearances and things like that, so that when we invite investors to come to our island, that there's no red tape, that the process will be smooth and seamless, so that they'll be able to ensure that what project they have going, they're not going to be over budgeted because of government delays. So that's where it goes with working with the private sector. And Governor Camacho just said it best, and he wrapped it all up on that.
Excellent. We love to hear it. We love to hear it. All right, great. So that leads us to the last half of our interview. And what I'm going to do is the Action PAC has 5 initiatives. I'm going to read them out one at a time, and we give the candidates the option to agree, disagree, or elaborate. So we'll start with the first one, and you guys did touch on this in the beginning of your welcoming. Our biggest initiative, and we spearheaded the conversation to continue to have that dialogue with the current legislature and the current administration to roll back the BPT. We are thankful as the Action PAC and as the business community that they did, but they didn't do it for all business. So we're going to continue that conversation. So initiative number 1, roll back the BPT, which is a business privilege tax, from 5 to 4 or less immediately for all businesses on island. Where do you stand on that?
Well, we definitely stand for it, rolling it back. People are concerned about the cost of living and inflation. And by rolling back the BPT from 5 to 4%, hopefully the retailers and vendors and wholesalers can also realize a reduction or savings in their upfront costs that can be passed on. Those savings can be passed on to the consumers. So it definitely helps our consumers, and we want to definitely do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we agree as well, but we also want to note for our viewers that the Action PAC, we want to put it out there that that a reduction of the BPT, because this has been a debatable issue, the reduction of the BPT doesn't necessarily correlate into immediate drops in prices. There are so many cost factors involved in operating a business in a highly inflated state of economy that the reduction of the BPT will keep the businesses open, but allow them to also flourish, add more jobs and more buying power for you, which is our citizens. So we just want to make sure that we as the Action PAC put our stance out there. Our second initiative is to advocate for government efficiency to protect and preserve its resources. You guys kind of touched on that. You want to simply agree, or is there anything else you want to add on that topic?
Well, definitely. In my time, we did a lot of consolidation. We're going to have to again take a look at the government of Guam agencies and determine how do we bring about the efficiencies and I believe there's 50, if not 60 plus Gov Guam agencies. It's grown quite a bit. And how do we bring about efficiencies in service using technology and being able to provide public service? That's critical. And there are areas where there are definite need for training, but efficiencies, training, technology that we can bring about, the efficiencies of service that we can provide to the people of Guam is going to be one of our utmost priorities coming into office.
Excellent. And we agree, because there's no way in 2022, with all the proof of concepts out there in other municipalities and cities and towns, that Guam is not able to also take that double step into current modern technology and just an efficient and easy way to operate as a government, but also to receive government services as a citizen. So we appreciate that. The number 3 initiative that we have is to improve the transparency at all levels of the government of Guam and promote open communication and collaboration between the public and private sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important. Transparency and accountability is always important, so that our private sector, our people know where our government stands. And, that's the only way we can do things, is open communication with government and the people. They deserve it. We owe it to the people to be transparent.
Excellent. And I'm just going to add a quick question, if you don't mind. In regards to the transparency, there has been concerns about if elected, would you guys continue emergency procurement, or would you return it back to the due process of various businesses having the opportunity to put forth a bid for certain items? Or do you intend to keep emergency procurement?
Well, I have to say that one thing we want to pursue is fairness, equity, justice, righteousness. In other words, there should be a place at the table for everyone. Um, and with what's happened under this emergency procurement is there are some that benefited and most that did not. So everyone ought to have a right to bid competitively for services and goods that the government is seeking. And as I said, it made sense that there was a declared state of emergency initially for public health reasons, but it has evolved again over the last 2.5 years into really a political response, not a public health response. This is a political response now. And I think many vendors out there are just saying, I don't mind if I did not get the job or I didn't win the bid, but if I didn't even have a chance to bid, if I didn't even have an opportunity to present in a fair and equitable situation, then that's where my disappointment is. I'm willing to accept that I didn't win it if it was fair and square, but right now it is not. And that's where fairness, equity, justice has to happen. And I believe Tony and I are really going to pursue a definite need to take an audit of all that has occurred and ensure that things were on the up and up. Thank you.
There you go, the transparency at its finest. And our fourth initiative is, we really believe in the strengthening of the relations with the U.S. military to focus and improve on the safety and security in our region, while also maximizing the economic opportunities that's going to be afforded to Guam. It's no secret that Guam, we are located in a geopolitical location. Where we're at. Some people call it the tip of the spear. Some people don't like that, but regardless of of how you want to put it, our location is so important to our country. So as far as strengthening the relations to improve our security and safety and maximizing economic opportunities, you have some thoughts on that? And do you agree or disagree?
We absolutely agree that we need to continue strengthening that support with our military partners. But Phil, I think what's left out of the equation is our National Guards men and women. We need to ensure that we continue to build and strengthen our National Guard men and women, because of the fact that the active duty folks that are currently on Guam, should anything happen in any region, in any place within our region, they're going to be forward deployed. Who's going to be left behind to protect our island? And that's where we need to ensure that the leadership, that the equipment, that the training, that the personnel for the National Guard is always first and foremost a priority of military commitment with the United States. And that's, we need to also build upon and ensure that when we know active duty knows something, that our National Guard also knows the same information, so that they can always be ready and prepared as always.
That's excellent. I haven't heard that train of thought whenever I've asked this question, but you really put a focus on our, as we call it, our local military. That's excellent. I haven't heard that one yet. So appreciate you sharing that. And we made it to the last initiative, and it's always a coin flip with the candidates, but it's very quick and straightforward, depending on your interpretation of it. Do you support or not of a part-time legislature?
As part-time legislature, usually they think about it as term limits, and then term limits become people can elect or unelect officials into office. On part-time legislation, some people look at it as well, are we going to be fully represented by our legislator if they're part-time, or are we going to be pushed to the wayside, so that because they're not there they're not there full time, so they're only going to pay attention when it comes time. I think that if we do have a part-time legislator, regardless of a full-time or part-time, one thing about our people, we're very committed to ensuring that we do the job that we're elected to do. And if the will of the people, if it goes out to a vote for the will of the people, I believe our legislators will go with a part-time legislature. But the governor and I personally, I think we would support a part-time legislature.
I'd just like to add that I was there, of course, in the Guam legislature when we did put out the initiatives. It was a voter referendum, whether or not to go to a part-time legislature. It was voted down. People decided no, to keep it as is. The voters did at that election. The other issue, I believe, was a reduction from 21 to 15, and that passed. And so we did have at one time 21 senators. Now we're down to 15. But when the question was posed to the voters in that particular election, do you want a part-time legislature? They voted no. And curiously, I asked why. Why? I went around and asked many people who said I'd voted against it. I said, why? They said, well, every 2 years, it's a referendum on your on your performance. And so you are limited for every term, 2 years. And so that's how they looked at it. But I do want to say in closing that anybody who is brave enough and has the courage to get in and serve with the Guam legislature or run for any political office is very courageous. The man and woman that put their name out there in the public and of course, as a candidate, is subject to much scrutiny. And then when you are elected again, the media is relentless on that. And so I think well, let's just see if they can put it out in a referendum and let the people decide if they want a part-time or full-time legislature. Thank you.
I love that. I love that that ending note of let the people decide. And with that said, this is a wonderful way for you to decide and hear from our candidates. So I do want to thank the Camacho Added team for their time and their candor. And that's why we have these platforms like the We Want to Know Action PAC show, is for you, the voter and citizen of Guam, to not only have a civic duty, but also understand it is a blessing to have a voice in who we choose to be our lawmakers and leaders of the island moving forward. So please listen to this interview back. Please hear the Camacho and Addis teams, their vision for the island moving forward, and come to your own conscious conclusion if that's the island that you see, the island's current state, and then the island you want to see in the future for our children to inherit. Listen to our other candidate interviews, because the early election is active and ongoing now from now till November 3rd. And if you don't make it to the early voting, the actual general election is on November 8th. Do remember, the Action PAC, we have a free voting van for community centers, for senior centers, for commercial operations. Get 10 to 15 of your closest confidants, jump on a bus, use our gas to cast your vote. Please reach out to actionpacguam.com or takeactionguam@gmail.com. With that said, I do want to give the candidates a time for their closing remark, and then we will wrap up this episode of the We Want to Know Action PAC show. Take it away, gents.
Thank you, Gov. We'd just like to thank Action PAC again, and to the viewers and listeners for giving us this opportunity to express our views and listening to our platform and what Governor Camacho and I would like to do as we, if we get elected into the as governor and lieutenant governor. And we look forward to working not just with our government partners, but also with our private sector partners, which is very important because they are key to ensuring that our island continues to move forward in a positive way. Gov?
I just want to say that, please, the voters of Guam, you must get involved. Exercise your right to vote and get out there. And do not forget what has happened over the last 3.5 years, 4 years. Do not forget all that has happened to our families, to our community, to our economy, to our island, and to the region. The winds of change are blowing. It's a new season. Vote Camacho Ada. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor Camacho and Senator Ada, again, for your time and your candor. We are going to be sharing this online, so we look forward to seeing your supporters rally behind your call. With that said, thank you to the listener and the voter and the Action PAC member. Membership is free. Visit our website and be safe, Guam. This is another episode of the We Want to Know Action PAC show. Adios.